Hey, we're about to jump into Cat Williams' birth chart. I do have a birth time. I do want to give the disclaimer. I'm recording on a different device, different computer this time, and I do not have my mic. So I apologize if the voice quality, the sound quality is not as crisp as it usually is, but hopefully you still enjoy this video. All right, so we are lucky enough that we actually have Cat Williams' birth time. There is a verifiable birth time for 528, September 2nd, 1971. Okay, a lot of times when we do famous people's charts, we don't have the birth time. So luckily for Cat Williams, we do. And we're going to talk about Cat Williams because Cat Williams has been breaking the internet. He recently did an interview with Shannon Sharp on Shannon's weekly podcast, Club Shay Shay, where he dropped a lot of just bombs about about Hollywood, the entertainment industry. He called out fellow comedians. He talked about him not sacrificing like his sense of dignity and pride, and just made some accusations as well about other people who have basically sold themselves right to Hollywood. And so, of course, he does this in a very funny way. There's a lot of quotables. I'm sure all of you, anyone who's been on the internet recently has seen. There's a lot of just different like sound bites of this interview that Cat Williams did, and a lot of people like he told the truth. He was funny with it, but also his delivery, and he said a lot of things that people found insightful. So just wanted to just give a little bit of a background. Now, because we do have his birth time, we are going to be able to look at his aspects as well. So we know him as the comedian, right? One thing I think that is interesting that people sometimes overlook is the ability for Virgo. Virgo can be quite funny. Okay, Virgo. I mean, there's other Virgo comedians. One that's also very well known is Dave Chappelle, because Virgo's ability to critique things in a person that is pretty funny or witty, it can produce the ability to entertain an audience, especially if the Virgo also has Leo energy. If Virgo has Leo energy in the chart, and as you can see, he is a Leo ascendant, and he has Mercury in Leo. Not only does he have Mercury in Leo, but he has it at the 27th degree, which in the system that I use is associated with Gemini energy, being able to produce an effect, being able to be public, right? Being able to be heard. And him having Mercury in the first house means the way he speaks, the way he talks, even if you listen to the cadence of his voice, it is going to be important to his identity. It's going to be important to his sense of self. And the fact that he's a Leo ascendant, with the sun being the chart ruler, means self, pride, a healthy sense of ego it was going to be essential to Cat Williams, right? And so we think of him being the comedian that's kind of just telling it like it is, right? He is not afraid to just say like, this person sold out, this person sold out, this is the real story. He's like, I'm telling the truth, this is right. He's not afraid to stand on it. It's interesting because he has his sun at the 9th degree, and the system I use that's associated with that kind of that Sag energy, that blunt, that rawness, right? So his sun being in the first house helps him be the type of Virgo who, and one thing I also find interesting about Cat Williams, when you look at the interview or any of his interviews, he does have a healthy dose. And again, this is not me saying there aren't some other stories about him that are controversial, namely the many arrests, right? All those stories you can look up, and we'll talk about that Mars in a moment, that Mars in Aquarius. But when you hear him talk about his journey as a comedian, he is self-reflective. Like any Virgo, for the most part, there is typically going to be some level of humility. Like even in a Virgo that has a lot of confidence, someone with a Leo ascendant, because when your ascendant is Leo, you have to capitalize on your talents. And I would say anyone should capitalize on their talents, but for a person who's a Leo ascendant, that journey is going to be very important. He also has his Leo ascendant at the 18th degree. So perfecting his craft, he talks about that in the interview with Shannon. Perfecting his craft, being someone who was willing to work harder. Look at where his moon is. Look at where his Mars is, 6th house. So he's put in the work. Regardless of whether you're a fan or you're not a fan, he has put in the work in order to make his career what it is. I also think, him being an Aquarius moon as well, there is going to be that little bit of erraticness to him. I do tend to notice mostly in Virgo males who have Aquarius moons, there tends to be sometimes a little bit of an erraticness in terms of the personality a little bit, and I'm not quite sure. I've analyzed why that is, but it does tend to be like, one, anytime you have Virgo and Aquarius together, you are typically going to get a person who is intelligent. And again, I'm not co-signing any of the other allegations that you can look up about Katt being arrested and why and those things. But I would say when you hear this man talk, he's not just someone just cracking jokes. He talks about life. He talks about how people should view life, and he's not lecturing to people. He's just telling it like it is. And I think that is something that is important, especially with someone with Mercury and Lilith. He comes off as confident, but at the same time, he's not trying to push people into a corner to believe what he's saying. He's just saying, this is what it is. That's also probably due to the Saturn and Gemini in 10th house I'll get to in a moment. But sometimes you can with that, especially with his moon being in Aquarius, his Mars being in Aquarius. When you look up his arrest, that could bring somebody who is smart, right? He has a smart, intelligent energy, but there's also a restlessness, right? That sometimes you'll see. Aquarius energy, interestingly enough, can be associated with someone who is, though we talk about air energy a lot in terms of, being someone who's an original thinker, being someone who thinks outside the box type of energy. You do see Aquarius sometimes, interestingly enough, being associated with action or the body, or there's some level of activity, because you think about someone like Michael Jordan, who's an Aquarius. When you think about the fact that you can see a couple of athletes, like high profile athletes that have Aquarius energy in them. So it's almost like Aquarius, because that Uranus energy, it's that need to experiment. There's sometimes can show up for some people being very physical or athletic. Now in his case, it's not about athleticism, but it can be about that. He is someone who, based on his past, is like, he's spontaneous. Mars in Aquarius can be spontaneous energy, okay? And when not applied correctly, Virgo in Aquarius can be erratic. It can be unpredictable. It can be energy but it's a very interesting, because when you see a sun Virgo Aquarius moon person do something out of character, they're going to rely on that Virgo energy and that explanation. There's always going to be this kind of reason why, this is why I did this, and they'll find a way to rationalize it. So I do think there is some, and again, as people get older, they tend to settle down, some people. And so you can sometimes see that, though, in terms of like when you look up, like there's another clip going around, and I forgot who the lady, I think it was another comedian he was talking to. So he's being interviewed, and the lady was saying, let me say, I don't remember who the lady was, but he was like 19 felonies, no prison, or something like that. Like let me say, I forgot who he was talking to, but he basically tells Wanda Smith, I think she's another comedian or radio host. And so she basically said something about him going to prison, and he's like, I've never been to prison. He said jail and prison are not the same. He's like 19 felonies, no convictions, knock it off, something like that, right? So it was kind of like a banter back and forth, between them. She tried to say like, oh, he's been in prison, and he was trying to clarify. But again, that's a very Virgo thing. He's like, well, Virgo energy, right? Technically, no. Like, no, I have not literally been to prison. I've just been to jail, right? But because he has a lot of arrests, and his Mars is in retrograde. Learning how to. I always look at retrogrades as, what is a person here to relearn? What is a person here to really understand in a more nuanced way? And so for Mars being, we're in the 12th degree, there is some level of him learning to act in a way that is in good faith. I think with that 12th degree, but it's Mars in retrograde also being about learning, how do your actions serve your life, the life you want to live, the life you want to have. And, if you listen to him speak, he speaks on a lot of different things. I think there is a level of, like I said before, humility and admitting his mistakes, or sharing the things that he's done on the path that, he needs to not do, or just kind of having a lot of like reflection. And so with Mars being in retrograde in his 6th house, this is about learning how to do things in a way that is more in accordance with the life that he wants or wanted to live, right? Even with his North Node conjunct Mars, like his actions are important to his journey. So it behooves him to make sure that he is structuring his life in a way, and it does sound like he's done that, or he's on the path to that, in a way in which he is moving forward, and he is doing things in a way that could be different than other people, because he has that Aquarius energy. They're not afraid to be different. When you have Aquarius energy, wherever that is, in the chart, like, this person is not afraid to do things in a way that, and again, when he does things in a way, he says things to help other people, like, think outside the box. Like, you don't have to do it this way. Just because this is how the rules are in entertainment or Hollywood, this is how I did it, right? And he does call out a lot of comedians, like, by name. That's a Mercury and Leo thing. That is right. That I'm going to tell it like it is. And it's not even a Mercury and Leo thing, because Mercury and Leo is just, by core energy, it is an intense confidence in one's ideas. But his Mercury is in the first house. So his Mercury is in the first house, which means for him, it's a part of his core identity. He has to just tell it like it is. There's no other choice for him. And then when we look at the fact that his Mercury is conjunct his ascendant, right? So now we also understand how important it is for him to, your ascendant, the way I describe ascendants is, look, it's on the first house cusp. Your ascendant, the way that I interpret it is, remember, if it's on the first house cusp, the first house is ruled by Mars. This is your instinct. Instinctually, he's a speaker. He's a thinker, right? He writes his own jokes. All right. His sun is conjunct Venus, which means, but also he cares about relating to people. He cares about helping people understand his thought process, right? He's likable, and again, when I say likable, we look at the fact that people are going to listen to him. And I don't mean he's not really dictating anything to people, right? But you see the people's response to this. You had some comedians even saying, yeah, he's right. Yep, he's right about that. He's right about this. Also, when we look at even public perception or how people may view him in society, right? He has Gemini on the cusp of his 11th house. The ruler of Gemini is Mercury. Mercury's in Leo first house, right? People think he's legit, okay? Now, again, there's some people who say, well, he's exaggerating a little bit. There are people saying that. There are definitely people saying that he's exaggerating. Now, again, I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slight exaggeration tendency in a little bit, because he also this ninth degree, right? He's a son of ninth grade. So which could, be like a more of an emboldened, right? He also has his Mercury in Leo, and his Mercury's in retrograde. Mercury's in retrograde. He is, it's interesting. I saw one clip of the interview where he talked about how he tailored his jokes to a white audience versus a black audience, and how he studied comedy. You could look at the clip where he talks specifically about it, but he talks about how he studied comedy. He studied people's reactions, right? So he's someone who's had to learn how he's going to use his intellect. It's an interesting story. He's apparently, he's apparently very smart. And like when I look at Wikipedia, it says he said that he learned to read at 3 years old and was communicating in different languages. What I found interesting about that was, well, he does have Uranus in the third house of learning. Uranus is going to make something different, interesting, odd, even, or something that's just outside the ordinary. But I think also the reason he went to comedy is Katt wants his words to connect and land with people. He's not necessarily someone that just wants to be a scholar and I know these things and I'm great, right? He wants to make sure, look at his Uranus even in the 11th degree, right? He wants his words to touch and reach people, and he wants to make that impact, right? What also I found interesting was, according to this Wikipedia, he emancipated himself from his parents at 13 years old and moved to Florida and supported himself as a street vendor. So, of course, your early childhood is Uranus, which would be interesting there to see, like, okay, that could represent having an unusual type of early life, that with him being really highly intelligent, and then also even when people have like a Scorpio IC, sometimes you do see there's been some type of change, dramatic change, in the lifestyle growing up. We're having to deal with really, serious or difficult topics, or having like a parent that's very strong-willed. But also what I found interesting is when I heard he emancipated himself, I thought to myself, I was looking at the parent aspect. So before I read anything else, I said, I bet you, according to these aspects, his main issue was with his father, not his mother, when he emancipated himself, because I saw that the sun was squaring Saturn. right? Now, Venus squares Saturn as well, which is going to impact romantic relationships. It's going to have romantic relationships, but a lot of times when people have Venus square Saturn, they can get a relationship, but sometimes it's hard to hold on to that long-term relationship. But that Sun squaring, I was like, I wonder if it was an issue with the father. And then I read the next line, and it said this was due to his father being intolerant and unsupportive lifestyle or what he wanted to do. Okay. So, I found that interesting. Before I even read, I looked at the aspects. Before I read anything else, I was like, I bet you it was more of the father. Okay. Maybe a situation which sometimes can be, you can sometimes see dynamics in the family where like one of the parents, sometimes it's the father, sometimes it's the mother, but the father is the one who, in some dynamics, right? Not all households, but has rules with an iron fist, is the one who's like, this is how it's going to be. And the mother just kind of, is, submissive to that, or is like, okay, well, this is how the families run. You have to listen to your father. Like, I wonder if his mother, was like that. So, I wonder though, also, his mother, Moon in Aquarius could represent like the mother, but the mother in some way was also, I remember like both of his parents had pretty, good jobs. Let me go back and look and see. Like I don't think she was a housewife though. Like she probably was a worker as well. He has Moon in Aquarius, which could represent the mother figure, and we could tell you some things about the mother. Let me see. Also you would see a family that has, in some way, shape, or form, there is some level of religion, and I know that he was raised Jehovah's Witness. And religion, the reason I'm saying religion, because look at the fourth house. Fourth house does not, obviously, if you see Jupiter, right, we talk about someone with big grand beliefs. So the family's beliefs would eclipse the whole household, right? So sometimes you can have a household where religion is not really the focus. Like, people may have a certain belief system, but with Jupiter there, 28th degree, there would have been an expectation in that household that everyone is following the same belief system. Also, Neptune in Sagittarius, right? Neptune can deal with faith, Sagittarius with truth. And so in his household, it could have been like, this is the one truth, especially with Neptune, his Neptune squaring Saturn as well, like this kind of disciplinarian approach to how he should view things, which could lead to, like, obviously Saturn, 10th house is him, right? 10th house, 4th house can be your past, your origins. It represents how you emotionally respond to things. But the 10th house is career goals. It is you. It is what you are deciding you want to be in the world, or how you are, more so depending on what planets there. Like, personal planets might more be what you are kind of stamping on the world, but and the outer planets can be more of those experiences that you had. But when I looked at the Wikipedia, it says that his father was, again, the family was raised Jehovah's Witness, and they didn't agree with like him having any type of future that didn't have to do with the religion. And so with him, look at the fact that Neptune is in the 4th house, you would see that there's some religious upbringing, and again, or beliefs driven. So if there could be someone else with a similar chart, and maybe the person isn't Jehovah's Witness, but it's a different religion or a different belief system or something everybody in the family is supposed to believe in, but that still left an imprint on him. So remember, your 4th house is still going to leave an impact. So though you do hear Katt talk sometimes about God and his relationship with God and how he views, right, that he's trying to stay true to his path, his purpose, not just what Hollywood wants him to do. So even though it sounds like he's not Jehovah's Witness anymore, he is still someone who is really, he has a belief system that pretty much probably emanated from, his childhood, but he's now decided and put a stamp on what he wants it to look like. Okay. Now, second house, I'm not going to talk about as much. I don't think the second house is as, so far as we know, I haven't heard anything about money, that many money issues. I mean, I'm sure if we go, I'm pretty sure there's likely been some suing before. Someone's maybe sued, legal issues. Let me look at this. Yep. So yeah, there's been some issues. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if there's been some lawsuits, that he's encountered or against him. Again, I'm not going to go full in depth with certain things. I'm going to focus on what is relevant, especially to the recent story. So when we look at his chart, when we look at children, he has a couple of children. I believe he has one biological child, another one that he adopted. When we do look at his chart, look at the 5th house would be children. On the cusp, he has a 16th degree. Okay, that's a Cancer degree. Sagittarius, the ruler is Jupiter. Look at this. 28 and 16 are what? 16 plus 12, Cancer. And 4th house is Moon, Cancer. So this does help us understand that children would be a part of his life in general. I believe he has like 7 kids or 7 adopted, 1 biological child. Do not quote me on that. Let me see if I can find that. But the point is you would see that children are a theme, that he is going to have, children. Yes, it says he has 1 biological child and 7 adopted children. Okay. I think Saturn's also important to talk about with this chart, because Saturn, we know, deals with your discipline. It's the area of your life where you're going to be the most disciplined. It's the area of your life where you are going to be the most consistent, where you have the most sense of goal setting, right? And with him, and sometimes the hardships, right, that come with that, or the challenges, but you can master whatever house your Saturn is in, whatever you're supposed to master that house. And so his Saturn being in the 10th house, it's about career, but Gemini, right? Saturn in Gemini, it is about understanding how to use his words and his thoughts in order to be successful in terms of his career. Even that 6th degree gives that another flavor of Virgo. Right. So the importance here is in his ability to build himself up, but also I think he's very strategic in how he has done what he's done. Right. He is, there is a level of intelligence there. His moon is also trining Saturn. There's a maturity in how he approaches work. We can disagree about, some of the other things in his history, right? If you look up the lawsuits, not lawsuits, the legal troubles. But if we look at the fact that he has his moon in the 6th house of work, everyday life, this is a man that likely gets up and grinds. He gets up and he does what he needs to do. He's probably very regimented in some way. Now, again, he has that Aquarius energy. He's a Virgo. So he is in his, he has his Aquarius energy in the house of Virgo. He has some very, very particular ways about him. I bet if his home, his house, he is very particular. And some of the habits and routines he does may make no sense to anyone else. Because it's not just Virgo, which Virgo can be very much like OCD sometimes. If Virgo likes things a certain way, Virgo can be associated with like cleanliness or wanting things to be like in a pattern. But Aquarius can bring about some kind of strange quirkiness, right, in any chart. So him having that there, I bet you there's some very specific ways in which he deals with his life, his household, his whatever. So I do think that's one thing I want us to know. But also when you look at the 6th house, we know what the 6th house represents, right? The fact that he has that trine to he is serious about his craft. He is serious about his work, right? He is willing to put in the work in order to do the things that he really cares about. And so with Saturn being in the 10th house, typically you see Saturn people who are going to be they're going to be seen. They're going to be at the top of their career. Of course you will have people who argue like, no, this comedian's funnier. We're talking about Chiron. Okay, so Chiron being in retrograde in the 9th house is interesting because we know the 9th house is of beliefs. The 9th house is of, so I do think that according to this chart, there would have been some kind of like journey that he had to go on to understand what he believed, to understand his own moral process. Like, what is it that he's going to follow? Now, even when we look at the fact 12, we know 12 can be associated with faith, with, belief, with Pisces type energy. Chiron being in Aries, it is about self. It is about self-discovery. I would assume, I'm not sure what his relationship is like with his parents now, but if there's been tension because of religious differences or lifestyle differences, then that definitely can likely manifest in terms of how the Chiron comes up, right? It is this need to work on himself in terms of like breaking free from other people's imprint on what his belief system should be. We also look at the fact that Uranus is opposing his Chiron, right? So individuality, freedom. There have been times where people have tried to stifle his individuality, and likely starting with, according to what has been revealed, he said, is like his family, right? Starting there. And also just society and also just industry, the industry he's in. So with Uranus opposing Chiron, there's likely been some experiences with that, and having him to be open enough to stand on his own accord of like, this is what I believe, this is what I know, I'm going to share the truth, I don't care what the consequences are, this is just what I believe, this is what I want to say. That's likely, shown through that Chiron in 9th house in Aries. Also, his Taurus, midheaven. So the 10th degree is a good degree for success. But again, it's not about you're getting it just because you exist. The 10th degree requires there to be cold hard stone dedication and being driven to succeed, which comes from within. So even Taurus being at his midheaven, Taurus midheaven people think you're transparent. When you have a Taurus midheaven, people view you as transparent, whether you are or not. Remember, the inner you is that I see, right? That's the private you. That's who you are when you're comfortable. That I see. But the MC is your public image. Taurus. What is Taurus seen as? Sometimes it's seen as very straightforward. It's practical. It is real. It is no BS, right? It is sometimes a little stubborn and stuck in its ways, but people tend to sometimes not see any of it's not really a mysterious midheaven. It's not a mysterious placement when you have a Taurus MC. People are going to view you publicly in that regard. And so Venus, being the ruler, Venus is in Virgo at the 10th degree. Exactly. So his Venus rules over his midheaven. Not only that, which can be helpful for money and how he makes his money off his talents and off his first house self. If he's true to himself, he makes money. If he's true to his identity, who he is, what he stands for. But also, if we look at the fact that not only that, Venus is that ruler, but also the 10th degree, they're both making that same degree to each other. Not only that, the Venus trines his midheaven, right? So that trine produces that earth energy, which can be about staying the course, staying the ground, making money. Regardless of what people think about this interview, I don't think it's going to stop his money. I don't think it's going to stop, right? It's not going to stop how he makes money. And some people are like, oh, it was a smart ploy. He just name dropped a bunch of people and got buzz off his name. But I don't think it was about name dropping. Again, I wasn't there. I don't know. But I don't think it's that. I think it is literally a combination of what we see in this chart. And so Venus trining that midheaven is going to mean like he will have people that like him, that appreciate him. Again, he's going to have some enemies as well. That there's going to be people who don't like what he had to say, people who don't like him, that he's exposing certain truths or saying certain things that he says are truth. But that Venus trining his midheaven is why, there's a likability factor there. Again, with that Virgo energy, it's like people are lauding how he said things. That's the thing about Virgo. Virgo energy can sometimes be not always seen for. Now, again, he's going to be seen by personality because he's a Leo ascendant and he has Mercury conjunct the ascendant, and his sun is in the first house. So you will see more of Katt being seen for his personality and people saying this is how he is and critiquing and praising and noticing certain things about him. Even though, like, if you didn't know who he was, you might be like, oh, this guy is like kind of, he's like, smaller in stature. He's quirky. He dresses kind of interesting. He's got his own, style going on. Like, people could look at that and be like, oh, who's that? But he's bigger than, his personality, but he's also not, he doesn't give off attention seeking. Now, again, can there be some erratic behavior sometimes? Yes. Anytime you get that Aquarius energy, and I just sometimes feel like because of the quincunx between Virgo and Aquarius, it can be hard with personal planets. I think Virgo making, aspects to outer planets and social planets is not as bad, but like sometimes when you got personal planets and you're Virgo, I don't know, something sometimes just kind of makes a little bit of an erraticness in the individual, because that mental stimulation from Virgo meets this spontaneous energy of Uranus, and sometimes a combination happens. But for all intents and purposes, people like Sun conjunct Venus, like there's going to be partnerships, favorability. There's people behind the scenes probably telling him, like, I really liked your interview. You were telling the truth. So he probably has more support than we think. Okay, in terms of people reaching out saying, like, you said what I can't say, right? So that's probably something that's happening as well. I'm not going to go into like the North Node right now. That really wasn't the purpose of this. Of course, I have videos on my other channel where I talk about all the North Nodes if you're interested in like your personal North Node. And I'm not going to get into Juno right now either at this particular time, but just wanted to like look at this chart. We had a birth time and really see how this fits into what we've seen just from Katt over the years, but also through the interview.